So what is the most important building tip that I can give you? Well, the most important building tip that I can give you would have to be proportions. And I repeat myself just to waste time, yes. But proportions are extremely important. And I messed up on this a lot when I began. And well, pretty much everyone, whenever they first started out in building, messed up on this. So a good proportion, it would be sort of maybe not good proportion, but an example of it would have to be the house compared to one of these trees. So the tree compared to the house, oops, would need to be around the same, where they have to complement each other, make it where they would seem like the tree is about the same scale as the house would be. So a good example of bad scale, which would is going to make a little bit more sense, is imagine a absolutely massive tree that was like nearly as big as that mountain over there, which looks really ugly, so let's not go over there. So it's a really, really big tree, magical tree, and that's the only reason it makes sense is because you say it's like magical. So whenever something is oversized, it makes everything around it seem really small. And whenever something's just it makes everything seem too small, as if it's just microscopic, and it just makes everything feel unbalanced and disconnected because the scale's off. So that's pretty important, and you can tell whenever the scale's off. Sort of like large mushrooms do look good, but you have to do it in a very certain way. It is not easy to really do at all, like at least properly. That is the most important tip that I can give you is proportions and scale. So well, I'll be explaining that later on, maybe in another video. So, first off, let's get into the base. I believe I was doing it here. I was going to do it here or here. I feel like here is a bit too small. Not entirely sure. I feel like doing one a little bit higher up. Yeah, let's do one higher up. So, to get the base just perfect it's not a very easy task, and let's change the terrain a little bit as well because the location is extremely important. The location is one of the most important factors when building a house, and you want it to look good because that like changes everything. Because the house needs to be designed around the terrain. So a good example would be the stuff down here. So if you look at this base, you see that it goes into the terrain a little bit like that, and this part right here goes into the terrain as well as this. Everything flows with the terrain. This right here is going around the mountain, flowing with the shape of the hill slash cliff face. I don't know what that is, truthfully. I made this world years ago, so let's not look at it too closely. Same way with this house and the path as well. Everything sort of flows together, very organic. That's very important with this type of building style. Now, if you haven't noticed, this is more of it's a different style of tutorial. So let me explain. This is going to be a bit of a longer tutorial, and I would advise you, which if you've already looked at the time, it's probably really long. I have no idea. It could be an hour long. I don't know. But here we go. So to get the shape right, what I like to do for these houses, there's going to be a few tips in here for other styles as well. So if you don't like this building style right here, which I don't like the roof personally, but I'll explain why I chose that in later on, so you can sort of decide whether or not you like that or not. Let's see, here we go. So let's get this. I'm going to cut a few scenes out, so don't worry, I'm not going to leave you just watching me build the entire time. However, it will give me a lot of time to explain things. So this right here is sort of like a bit of a wireframe of what the house is going to look like, just the general shape of it, just the outskirts, just the edges. So it's not supposed to look too pretty at the moment, obviously. This is just an outline. I would also recommend making sure everything isn't, like nothing should be touching the grass, or like this right here. It should not look like that because these are two textures touching, two different textures. To fix that, you just have to put a block out and like this. So you should be able to tell the difference. Try to keep it like that throughout all of them. That just really just helps out everything. It really does. So I was thinking about adding in maybe a tower here. I don't know. I feel like making this one a bit more structural than the ones down there. But I better not go too far from the houses down there. It is supposed to be a part of the same style. So here we go. So this one does seem like it's a bit bigger because of the base is a bit taller. One reason why I have the base so tall, unfortunately, is because of this. Because if you add in a taller base, it gives you more options than just having a house setting on flat ground. So having that tall base and it on the side of a mountain really helps it to look better in most cases. And you can add in more shapes to the side of it, sort of like what I did with this. This right here just makes the whole entire thing just look so much better. Just that alone. Without that there, I think it would look a whole lot worse. I just really like that. Unless I just like that too much, and it's just, yeah, I don't know. I just really do like that capability, being able to add on extra shapes. Same thing here, to take up some of that room. Um, it seems like it would be a downfall, but really I think it helps it a lot, in my opinion. So having that tall base, in my opinion, does help quite a bit when you're trying to decide what to do with the house. One thing I'd definitely recommend is do not whatsoever make the house the same on all sides, or even on two sides. You should try to keep the shapes different on pretty much every side, which is probably going to be pretty difficult for some of you, but this is medieval. It's supposed to be messy. It's not supposed to be smooth or clean. At least this style of medieval. There are some styles of medieval, which things are going towards that now, is a less messy, smoother style of medieval. In fact, I actually like that better than this style. It's just doing a tutorial on that would be a whole lot more difficult. So this is sort of like the general idea of it is having each side. So this side right here, you see that it is a larger piece on this side. So if I was going to do that, I would at least move it over to this side. However, I want to do a smaller one. So the windows are based on 3. So to plan out where a window would be is to put these little extensions. So this right here is going to be another window. So that's sort of a nice little addition in my opinion. I like that. I think I might extend this over. There we go. Okay, there. I think that's good. So one reason why the base is like this, which some of you should already know, but if you do not know, that's fine because I'll explain it in a second. The base is like this because you can't put a house, you can't do the same thing with a house. So let me try to think of an example. So if this was a wooden house and you're going to put like make a house, and you're going to put the house sort of like this, and this was a wall, that wouldn't work. It has to have some sort of color separation. So the only thing that really can do that in real life, at least, the only time they ever do a thing like that is with the base. So the base can be really, really tall, and it can go like into the ground a little bit and actually like support it better like this than if you just had a wall leaning to the side. So that sort of it makes it more realistic. It makes it more structural, sort of like this berry here. This makes it more structural because you see that the base is holding up most of it. Than if the walls were just sprouting up out of the ground, which I've seen people do that, but people don't do that very often. It's not a very common mistake, so I don't expect you guys to make that. So make that mistake. Here we go. So I think I'll add in another window here, extend this up a block. So we'll later on we'll end up changing the shape quite a bit in order to make sure that it's really curved. In fact, we may end up removing some of these corners. I think I did that a few times as I removed the corners. So there's a lot of things I'll need to explain, especially once you get to the wall and other things. At the moment, I think I'll explain some of the fluidity type deals that happen when you're in Minecraft or any sort of art. So this is art. I don't care what you think. This is art. Minecraft can be used to create art. And even if it wasn't art, everything has a flow to it. So whenever you're painting something or if you're building something in Minecraft, the building or the pathway or whatever you're building will have a flow to it. And whenever it has something has a flow, it really makes it more like feel more alive. Now, the flow is different for everything. Sometimes it's just a straight line. Sometimes it's this really crazy curved looking effect. So, like depending what position you're in, the thing might have a different flow. So your eyes go from one point to the next. So I would probably say the flow sort of goes around like this, which is really abstract. This is an abstract idea. So if you don't get it, I barely get it. So don't worry about that. It's not really important if you don't get how the flow works of building. I don't really get how it works. I barely understand that. I sort of get like the idea. It's like it's sort of like how I envision it, which is a little bit different than what I'm thinking. But this is how I think of it. It's sort of like where does your eyes travel? Like how do your eyes travel whenever they look over this? Your eyes will look at the pathway. So from this direction, your eyes will look at the pathway and go around, look at this to this. So that's how I sort of see the idea of the flow of it is where your eyes are traveling. That's what I got out of a painting tutorial, which I will not be able to find because it was several months ago. Um, Actually, I probably could find it, but it's going to be a pain. But if you want to, you can try finding the tutorial, and you can start getting some ideas. But painting tutorials, trying to convert them to Minecraft is really difficult. But let's continue on. So having a flow is very important whenever you're building. Even if you don't understand that type of flow, you can understand the other kinds. So having it connect and be fluid together. So it's sort of like a fluid transition. So to have it combined with the terrain. So the terrain has a lot of really organic shapes, curved, and you have to combine the house with the terrain. You have to make them complement each other. You can't just smack a house on some land and expect it to look good. I mean, it still might look good, but it looks a lot better whenever it moves with the terrain a little bit. So that's sort of what the idea behind this was, is that the base is what connects it to the terrain, and the shapes of the building is based on circles. So these two things sort of complement each other, at least in my opinion. I'm not like the best Minecraft builder or artist in the world, but that's how I sort of think about it. And so far the results work pretty well, so I think I'll stick with that for now, unless I figure out a better way to think about it. And I'll tell you guys if I do. I made a lot of mistakes whenever I was first beginning. So if you think you're messing up, you probably are. Just accept it, and it's fine. Making mistakes is fine. I make a lot of mistakes, a lot. So as we continue on, so trying to make everything connect together, especially this pathway. One thing I'd recommend for having a house is have a pathway leading up to it. Makes complete sense having a pathway lead up to it, but having a pathway like this flow with the terrain, it sort of separates the house with the terrain, and it adds some depth to it, which there's different ways to explain depth, and I'll end up explaining that later on in the tutorial. But now we need to start in on the windows. So I think of the windows sort of like just add in some curves for like this. So this curve is based on the 3-2-1 curve. So this is sort of like the 3-2-1 circle. So this would be 3-2-1, and then to do the rest of the circle, you do just repeat that same thing. So this next one would be 3. But for this curve, you just have that. So it has a 1 right there. You're probably wondering, how is it a curve if it's a 1? That's because of this really long stretch. I just consider that a 3. Just to simplify it so I don't have to try to figure out a perfect way to make a curve. It doesn't matter. Here we go. So it also doesn't matter how big your base is on each side, because as you can see, the roof goes down and up a little bit. That's sort of the point. Having a roof go up and down a little bit where the windows are uh, generally, not genuinely, helps quite a bit. It makes it seem a bit more interesting, because one thing you're trying to do when you add detail is make it more interesting. That's sort of like the definition of interesting is detail. Detail and interesting are the same thing. So you detail something to make it look more interesting. which is a very weird concept in my opinion. At least I think so. So here we go. I think we got it now. Oops. So these bits right here are just where the windows are going to be. So it's 1, 2 from the base up and 1 over. This is not meant to be a block for block tutorial. It's meant to sort of help you design your own medieval house. So if you don't know how to build this house afterwards, that's not the exact point. But if you can, then great. You'll learn how to build these houses. But I definitely would recommend making sure everything's different. If it doesn't turn out perfect, that's a good thing. That's a good thing because this is not meant to be a perfect house. Also, another thing I should mention now that I want to extend a few things out, me explains first, and then me explain what I'm about to do first, and then explain some of the terraforming. So one thing you need to sort of understand whenever you're building something on a flat world, which many of you actually do build on flat worlds, is that whenever you're building on a world like that, that is flat, you are going to have a lot of bad looking builds that are not exactly bad. A great example of this is these houses right here. These houses do not look nearly this good just on a flat world. So whenever you have something combined with the terraforming, it makes it look a lot better. So I would make sure you do not skip out on the terraforming. Terraforming is really, really important. And in fact, that's one of the things that make your builds look good. Many times it's not even the house itself. In fact, later on in this, later on in this tutorial, I think I might show you how to do a second type of roof because there's two ways to do the roof. There's a curved way, which I may have to do a separate tutorial on how to do roofs, and you have to modify it then. It just depends on what goes on, but there I may have to explain a different tutorial. But you can do the roof differently because this roof is not very good. I just made the roof as simple as possible because I didn't want to have to deal with doing a lot of the painful stuff that you would have to do in order to make the roof look good. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, I was lazy. Let's just accept it. So here we go. I keep saying so many times. The next bit that I would probably add would be the cobblestone. This is like sort of like the next step. So let me explain the terraforming. So whenever you have a oh wait, I don't even think I explained this. So whenever you get done with the base, you have to add in these bits right here, which this just adds in the rest of the curves around the whole entire thing in order to make sure that you know where to add in your cobblestone. That's like the point of it is to show you where to add in the cobblestone. So you'd add in on everywhere that there's a hole and there's the stone brick. So let me get back to the terraforming. So whenever you're doing a house and it's not on terraforming, it's always going to look worse. At least in almost every case, it's going to look worse whenever you don't have it on terraforming, because terraforming really complements your build. So if you have a house and you think it looks bad, it may look bad, but one reason it may look bad is because it's not on terraforming. So, not on terraforming. That sounds sketchy. But anyways, it may look like that because of the fact that it doesn't have any terraforming, which is terraforming is really important. So I'm extending these out for a later because I have a bit of this build that I like adding in some stairs, and the stairs generally need to go down a little bit further. So here we go, just adjusting the curve a little bit. So making sure that just make sure you terraform. That is so important. I keep saying it. I keep repeating myself. And you're probably getting annoyed at me, but it is very important. It's generally what makes the build look good in most cases. I think I might show you later, like what I just said a few minutes ago. I'm going to show you an example of a really crappy house on some terraforming, and that will sort of show you an example of like just imagine the house without terraforming, imagine it with terraforming. Yeah, you'll be able to see the difference in a few minutes or at the end of the video. If I don't do that, I might not. Yeah, I remember, but I don't know if I will. There we go. So now we're adding in the bits where the windows are going to be. I like making my windows 2 blocks tall. So you have to have a block in between. So there's going to be a stair here, no stair, no stair, stair. So this is the where the window is going to be. So if it's too tall, you have to have one. You have to have two extra. So it's going to be four tall, or four above this little thing right there. Here we go. You can do it taller or smaller. It's just generally it's about 4 blocks tall, or technically 5 if you add in that bottom one. Here we go. This is where I add in these stairs, and then I start in on adding the walls as well, which then we'll start detailing it after we get the general shape of it done. And I may end up skipping certain parts. I'm not entirely sure. I'll tell you. Uh, yeah, I'm going to need to figure this out. So where are the blocks that I need? Yeah, this is why I search everything up. Here we go. I can never find anything, and I just delete it. Okay, here we go. I'm used to the Xbox One edition, or Xbox One edition, or the Windows 10 edition, because then it saves what you just searched for. I really like that. I think they need that on this one. Okay, here we go. So it's really easy. Um, if you're having trouble doing it, doing these houses, that is fine. They just take some inspiration off them at least, and do something you can do. One thing I would have to recommend is that whenever you do these houses, that they are a little bit odd whenever it comes to rules of how to make it look good because of how organically shaped they are. They do have a very organic shape because of all these curves, and the other curves we'll be adding in. In fact, we'll probably end up deleting part of this. Yeah, I think I might do that now. So like sort of like right here, I'm adding in a bit of a curve. So you just have to get used to using so many curves. Uh, there we go. So like adding in that this is going to have a lot of curves. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, it's going to be interesting, to say the least. But the details work differently on curved houses because curved houses do not need as many details. Well, like other types of details because it's curved because the shape of the house actually is a detail. So whenever you have a curved house, it's actually a detail. The shape of the base is a detail of it, which I hope you get that. If you don't, I might have to explain that later on. But here we go. So that's something I recommend definitely remembering that the curve parts of a house can be used as a detail. A good example of this, actually, this might help you understand, is this right here. Oh, goodness. The fact that this is curved actually is one of the things that make it look detailed because it's curved. It's something that's a bit of an odd thing. Oh, had to fix my chair. There we go. So it's really an odd idea that the shape of a building is detailing it. There's only a set amount of ways you can detail something, and shape is one of them. Shape, texture, color, the stereotypical stairs as detailing. There's many different ways. Texture is there's different ways of texture as well. There's a lot of different things you can do. It just takes time to learn when to use them and how they are used and a few other things. It's going to take practice to learn when to use certain details like that, especially since it is odd thinking about color as a detail. So the color of a house or the color of the terraforming, if used properly, can be used to detail it. Sorry, I've sort of dwelling on that a lot. That it's also a very important detail in building these houses. Sorry for the cringy joke. Here we go. I believe we are almost done. So this right here separates the colors of the wall with the colors of the stone. So whenever you have two colors stuck together like this, especially on a house, it sort of has like a high area of contrast right there, right in between the blocks. So you sort of see like this area of really high contrast, and it just does not look right. For this right here, it's fine because there's less contrast because of how it's 3D in the wall. This right here has some contrast. It's a bit of an odd concept as well. There's a lot of odd building concepts that are like, why? Like, why is that even a thing? I don't. Yeah, there's quite a few. But that is one of them. Having two textures touching, or two polar opposite colors touching is a weird, like, it is a like an area of high contrast, and that an area of high contrast catches your eye, and then they'll see if you have like a mistake next to it, they'll see it. It's like, yeah, I think that's how it works. It's that's something I don't exactly fully understand. I do understand it decently well. It's just not something I try to figure out because, well, I mean, why do you need to figure that out? It's as long as you avoid it. I mean, it's perfectly fine. At least that's how I think of it is of as a thing of high, like an area of high contrast. Anyways, let's stop dwelling on the past. So here we go. I think I'll add in a wall here because it's like on the other side. I won't keep that the same. There we go. This is something that you're gonna have to get used to as well as just building in general. Because if you are trying to learn how to build better, and you are having like trouble learning how to build, and you uh, or something like, yeah, like whenever I started out, let's use this as an example. Whenever I started out, I did a build battle with a friend and ended up building a castle afterwards. And like after that, whenever, like once I got into building a lot more, and I started building more, and I started building a lot, it started to become really difficult to learn how to build because there wasn't any videos on it, as well as the like there wasn't like it was really difficult to just to start building. That was something for me is that like it's difficult to build. Like I could build something, but it was difficult to finish it because you stopped liking it. So if you are going to start a project, this is another building tip that's more general and less about this style as well. If you're going to start a building project, or if you're learning how to build and you're about to start a building project, um, I'd recommend planning it out to be about at most 2 weeks. No, wait, at most a month or 2 months. Yeah, at most 2 months if you're really patient. 2 months. Because whenever you're building something like that, there's this really weird thing. I don't know how to explain it. You actually no, I do know how to explain it. I think we'll find out. Whenever you're trying to learn how to build and you're building on a project and it is longer, if it's too long, you'll start disliking your build. Like you'll just start looking at your build and going, "Wow, this is really awful." It's yeah, very fun. You'll start to dislike it, and I just realized, wow, I should have done it this way. Okay, well that's wonderful. Messed up. That's fine. So if you're following along, then you need to change that. So it's a you'll start disliking your build if you build on it for too long. So a good example of this would be if you're building a city and you have been working on the city for a really long time, you'll start disliking it because, well, for actually a good reason. Whenever you're building on a project, you start becoming better because you're building. So you start becoming better, and the better you get, the more you notice the mistakes you used to make. And once later on, once you do that, you'll look at your project and be like, wow, there's so many mistakes. So you'll either do one of two things. You will either keep building and not care. Actually, there might be three things, but most of the time you probably will care, and you'll either destroy your build and redo that one house or those few houses, and you'll go through that cycle. So a several month building project, like a project that was only supposed to take 3 months, might take into like several years because you keep removing your houses. I know people have done that. I almost did that myself several times. So yeah, I just quit the world because it's just, yeah, I'm not gonna do that much work because then it's the same thing's gonna happen. So that's one thing I definitely try to avoid is being becoming better in the middle of a project and realizing that you don't like your building or something like that. That's something that had to happen quite a bit for me, especially. And if that happens for you, it's completely fine, natural if you think that you are not good at building anymore after that. Because if you do not like your build after you finished, that just means you're getting better. So just enjoy your build. Just relax and enjoy it. Here we go. I am talking about a lot of really like larger genre tips, but I really hope you're enjoying these tips because these tips are this world and the tips I'm telling you are not hard to wait. They are hard. They are hard to come up with, and not really come up with, but to do in a video. Because if I mess up on this video really bad, I'll have to rebuild this house. But anyways, that's enough of the explanation. So we'll start in on the roof. Sort of like what I call this is the blocks of color method. I just dropped that. That's wonderful. I call it the block of color method because in painting they call it blocks of color, which is not even, or is it blobs? I'm not entirely sure. But whenever you're painting something and you're doing something like this, you do these blocks of color. So sort of like a good example is this wall right here. So, or actually this base. So this base is all the same color, all the same block. And this base it's going to end up looking like this base. Goodness, I just hiccuped. So it'll end up looking like this base, and it's going to have more details. It's going to sort of look like this one as well. We're going to add in some details, and you add in your details after you get the base color and shape into it, as well as there might be like a house or a room down there as well. Same way, we're going to do the roof the same way, and that's one way I keep saying way, goodness. So that's how I would recommend planning out your houses, or if you're building something, in order to not waste time, start in on the details afterward, especially if it's a house that you don't do very often. Because if you don't do the house very often, you're probably going to end up messing up, and if you mess up, then it's going to be very, very fun. So here we go. It also gives you more opportunity to do other things and plan it out and remove stuff without wasting as much time as you would have if you had to destroy over half of your details that you added. Anyways, here we go. Almost there. So the roof is something which I said I was going to explain. So the roof is a really just basic roof. We're just taking it and we're basically spamming general sphere looking things on it. Uh, so it is very, very basic. So later I'll tell you a few tips to make it look better because we're not done. I have to add in some of the details as well. If you're on Bedrock Edition or on Java, I'd even recommend using mob spawners as like the roof is broken. So if you want your roof to be broken and look like there's like this scaffolding, like this metal scaffolding holding it up, I'd recommend using mob spawners. Like get creative with it as well. That's something that's very important. Don't go exactly by what I'm telling you. Test it out for yourself. If I say something's true, like the two colors or two textures connecting, try it out for yourself. Which actually that one's more that's something that's a little bit like you may not notice it as easily because that does happen pretty often. So like I'm sure it's happening on this roof, like right here, but it's not a big deal. In most cases, it's not a big deal. But you still need to sort of look out for it and try to remove it in certain areas, just like in really obvious areas, like this area. Except for, on the outside, like, yeah, there we go. That makes more sense. So this roof is very basic. As I said, it's basically just like this blob of a roof. You don't have to be stressed out about it. As you can see, I'm just spreading like this on there like butter. Not difficult at all. Now we're getting to the difficult part. I'm joking. This is not a difficult part. The whole entire build is pretty easy, and the style is a bit more of medieval fantasy because it's a little bit less realistic. Other buildings or other builds that you'll see that other people do are a bit more, I would have to say, structural. This one still is structural, has structural curves like this one right here. This is a structural curve. Maybe not exactly is structural curve, but it is a curve that is used in the structure, so I'm going to call it that. A structural curve is a curve that's used in a building that is used to hold it up, because curves are pretty powerful. So a better example would be this structural curve here. That's a structural curve. Wait, no, it's not a very good example. A better example would be these. This would be a structural curve. which this is not exactly a curve, but this is the best example that I have at the moment would be that. So that's a bit of a structural curve that's holding it up. That's sort of like the idea with this as well. It really pairs well with the terraforming, and it's gonna sound like I'm this like an artist, like the fluidity and the flow of your build. don't 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 like get nervous because of the big words. They're not exact. They're not important. Just need to make sure that you make it look fluid. That's one thing I would consider that is decently important in your builds is to make things fluid. Said that already, but is something that you can be said multiple times and it will hold true. Here we go. So this little plus sign right here, I call it a plus sign, but that's like the smallest circle you can make besides whenever you use stairs. So that will make it look a little bit more curved. At least I think so. I think it makes it look a bit more curved. But this is going to take a long while. I don't even know how long we've been recording, so this may end up taking an hour, and I may end up having to fast forward certain bits since I'm running out of things to talk about. Actually, I'm not, but have a few things I'll have to talk about later on, and I just dropped a pencil. Okay. So I think I'll explain the details for the base, and then I'll skip a bit of that, and then start in on the details on the wall, show you how to do that, and then skip that, and then show you the after effect, and show you the things that happened while you were gone. So in a second, I will skip a little bit of it, but first I need to show you the base. So the base, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in these like cobblestone squares and little oblong looking shapes, sort of like this. So that's a good example of what it's going to look like. And you have to add in decently large veins of it because most of the build is made out of cobblestone, stone brick, and then the little bit of andesite, polished andesite to make it. I've heard someone describe it like this. I do not remember who. I'm sorry because I see a lot of stuff and I know a lot of people, so too bad. Someone said that the andesite makes it look like it is that it's been made out of local materials and they ran out of cobblestone, so then they just started putting in some of the andesite in there because they ran out of cobblestone. So I like that explanation for it, truthfully. I like the explanation because then it makes it seem more real, in my opinion. Like if you know that, you actually like that the person added that in because you realize that it makes it seem a bit more real. Like there's a story to it. It makes it feel like there's a story to it if you know that that's what the person was thinking about. So that's my opinion at least. Here we go. So I probably should explain the rest of the details so I can skip a little bit of this so you don't have to watch an hour of a video. It's probably already that long. So later on, we'll be adding in some more stairs, some cobblestone stairs. Here, let me get the stairs as well as the wall. Here we go. Collect that up. Pick it up. There we go. We're going to be adding in some stairs like this to the base of it, as well as some of the stairs like this, maybe a little bit like that. I don't know, add in some pieces that look like they've been chiseled away, especially the stone brick, so it makes it look like there's a piece of the brick missing, like a brick was taken out, which at least that's how I think of it. Like, I think that's actually sort of interesting. That looks like a brick was taken out, like that brick right there. I can't seem to do it there. I'll have to add in some. Here we go. Oops, there. So I'm going to add in a few more details so you can sort of get the general idea, and then in a few seconds I will have to skip. So we're here. This is what I mean. This is what I need to mention is that we're going to add in some cobblestone wall along this. This right here seems to make it a bit more structural because it adds in like this structural line to it. Like it makes it seem like it's being held up by more than just these weird oblong curves. It gives it like this straight line that your eyes can follow, so makes it seem more structural. Um, That's what I think, at least. There might be, there's probably more reasons to use these cobblestone walls. It's just that's why I use them, is to make it look more structural and add in like this to cut up the curves, because there's so many curves in this that you need something to make it seem a bit more structured and hold up, as well as like the walls make it look more curved as well, at least round this way. It makes it seem straighter this way and more round this way, because of how the walls are not a full block, uh, which is quite interesting. So we'll end up adding in a few more of those and probably put this in a few. I think, yeah, I think this is looking good so far. Add in a stair. There's a lot of things you can do with these medieval builds. So I think I'm almost ready. I'm making sure I don't forget anything. Oh yeah, the andesite. There we go. Almost forgot the andesite. As you can already tell, I've made quite a few mistakes on this thing, and I've had to fix a few things. So don't be nervous about making mistakes. That's one thing that I'm a little bit nervous about whenever I'm building, especially an Xbox Edition, which I know quite a few of you play an Xbox One Edition, the Bedrock Edition. So that is something that you're just going to have to deal with. If you mess up, it may seem like you wasted an hour of your life. Really, really you didn't. You just learned something new. Every time you fail, you learn something new. So this right here, I think we're doing pretty good. So that's, as you can see, that's sort of like the effect we're going for, is we're going for this effect that they ran out of bricks, and while they're waiting, they just use this andesite to build it up, so like layer by layer. So they ran out, and then they just added in those chunks, because that's what they had left, like left over in what they were doing. Here we go, add another one here, another curve. We might add that a few more blocks up. So pretty much, I think that's what I have to say about the base. I might add in a few more things uh, whenever I'm doing this, and I'll explain it afterwards. So I guess we're going to teleport through into the future and pretend that a robot did this when really I did. We'll ignore this. Okay, ready? I'll run to that wall. Okay, hello, we are back. Now, let's see what happened. Okay, so just add in some more stairs, some andesite, cobblestone, and some of these walls, as well as I almost started in on detailing the walls, but yeah, I stopped myself. So I also added in this bit right here, just seeing how this is going to look. We're going to expand on that, because this is a whole lot of wall, and it needs something. So adding in this right here should be some nice separation. May have to extend it up a little bit. We'll find out. So on this bit, as I said, you just add in some of these. You know, you can sort of get the idea of it. It's over detailed, which is something I don't really like now as much. There we go. Adjust my mic. Okay, so starting in on the wall, this should not take too much time. We add in some stairs as well as some soul sand later on. Adding in some soul sand helps out quite a bit whenever you're trying to make your house just, you know, that little extra bit better. One thing I would recommend once we get to the roof. Wait, we already did the roof. Never mind. Okay. Oh well, which I'll explain it right after I finish up this wall, which is about texture packs. So I'll start in on talking about it now. So texture packs are something that many of you, including myself, I do not like using texture packs because I feel like it's cheating, and I didn't do it. I feel like somebody else is doing the work for me because they made the texture pack, and that's what I feel like that's what's doing the work is the texture pack, and not me. So I personally do not really like texture packs. Though if you do have the ability to use a texture pack, and you're okay with using a texture pack, and you do not care, use a texture pack. In fact, I'm going to show you an example of what it looks like with a texture pack in a second. It's going to look a little bit odd like this soul sand because, it wasn't planned for that texture pack. There we go. I wasn't planned for this, the texture pack I'm about to use, so it's going to look a little bit odd. But this right here is, I'm using soul sand to texture the bottom of it to make it look like old wood, old rotten wood, as well as it makes it look like it's shaded a little bit. So whenever you're doing a large building, or even a small building, which this doesn't exactly work nearly as well as a large building, if you add in darker blocks in certain areas, it makes it look more 3D and as if it's been shaded, like a imagine if you're drawing with a pencil and you shaded it in with made it darker in certain areas. That's the point, shading. Uh, I'm sure you got that. I'm just making sure, just in case. It's a really simple idea, and it works surprisingly well in most cases. And I like the way that looks personally. I know many of you probably don't like it, but I like it. And if you want to remove it, remove it. It doesn't matter. It's your house. You can do what you want with it. Change it up a little bit. In fact, I recommend changing it up a little bit to just to add in that little bit of an extra flair to it. Now we're just adding in sort of like the, I don't know what this would be, sort of like the where you would hang the shutters for the window. I'm not entirely sure. I just sort of see it as like a pillar. Like that's the reason why I added it was because it's just a pillar to hold up the roof at that area. Here we go. Now we need to add in where the window is going to be. Right there. So this is sort of what the window looks like. I just don't use glass. I just most of my houses I just don't use glass. It just does not look nearly as good as what you generally want it to look like. In my experience, I cannot get windows to look right. I mean, if you're using glass, it's too not really fuzzy, but it looks like it's scratched. I mean, it looks like scratched glass. I mean, I don't like Minecraft glass. And if you use ice, which ice is pretty nice. Ice is pretty nice. Totally not cringy. Poet and didn't know it. Whenever you use ice, it's like it's ice. So then people look at you like you're a retard because you're using ice as a window, when really it's more like ice is actually more like clearer than like like Minecraft windows, like the glass, Minecraft glass. There we go. Had a bit of a tongue twister there. Sorry for the blah, 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 but gotta do what you gotta do. So right now I'm just doing that same concept of shading, as well as making it look like it's older in certain places. I'm just trying to add interest to it. I haven't figured out a definitive reason for adding this. It's really bright though, so if you don't want to add it, that's fine because I don't exactly like the roof myself. You can change the roof however you want. I don't personally like it as well, so if you don't like the roof, that is fine. I just using it because it's a decent roof design. It's not supposed to be perfect because I want to do a whole tutorial on roofs by themselves. So that will be later. That will probably not be the next one. The next video should be a cinematic of sorts. Unfortunately, I do not have the next video planned, so at the end of the video, you get an extra few minutes of not really anything because I don't know what I'm doing in the next video. So. But in the next video should be a cinematic of some sort. I hope you watch that one. Going a bit off topic for the next video. I hope you're enjoying this video so far as well. It takes a lot of work to do these because I had to do each of these houses by hand. I do that house by hand and this, and I practiced the house before I was even on this world as well. So I did quite a bit of these houses. Did like 10 of these houses before I even no, yeah, 10. I did like 6 of these houses before I even got in this world. So definitely support the channel if you think that you actually will watch it. Like if you, not think, but if you know you will watch it and you will actually learn something from my videos, then subscribe. Only subscribe if you think you will learn something off of them and if you think you'll enjoy them. And obviously I'll be increasing the video quality more and more, so I'll get better and better. So if you want to see some better content in the future than what I'm doing now, then definitely subscribe or like and comment. One thing I do need to sort of communicate about commenting is not just for my channel, but for every channel. If you want to support anyone's channel, not just my own, if you want to support anyone's channel, and but you don't want to subscribe, at least comment or like the video. And if you don't want to like the video because it shows up in your like list, like playlist thing, then all you gotta do is just comment. Because if you comment, it actually does help a lot because it gets you higher in the rankings of YouTube, so more people can find my videos. So if you think my video will help other people, then like and comment because that does help a lot. So here we go. So I think we're almost done. I feel like there needs to be a window right there. I think I might add a one window right there after I edit some more of this. A lot of this build is literally just going off of what you think will look good. Um, you just gotta test out ideas. I mean, if you mess up, you mess up. Doesn't matter. Okay, so whenever you're building anything, accept that you're going to make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. I mean, I made a mistake in this video multiple times. And if I make mistakes in the video making the video, and I can just edit things out whenever I want, though. But yeah, you get the point. Um, Whenever you make mistakes, just accept it and move on. I don't exactly like that. Whatever, I won't keep it. Let's see, I need some cobblestone and some andesite. Okay, so sorry for the little cut off back there. I edited that little scene out. At least I believe I did. If I didn't, this is going to be a bit of an awkward conversation. So one thing I do need to apologize a little bit for is that this video is a very long video. It's probably an hour long. I have no idea how long it is right now. I just know it's very long. But this is some pretty important video as well. This is one that you're going to get a lot of tips from. You don't even need to watch all of it in order to get some tips. I recommend watching all of it because you can get more tips off of it and get some ideas for your own builds and your own stuff that you're going to make. But if you don't, that's perfectly fine. So whenever you're doing these like a house like this and you have a really tall base, you have to add in something to really take up some of that space because that's a lot of space that's not exactly used. So I would recommend adding in a window, sort of like this. This is how I like adding in the windows personally. So I just add in this little thing right here, and I just plop down some stuff. I pretty much do the same design as up there, just down here. In this case, it's going to be a little bit different than up there as well. It's using mainly wood this time rather than having stone below it. But another thing I do is if there's an area right below it, I add in a little thing like this. Add in a pillar type deal on right there. So one example of that would be this area, and I think I probably should have been using oak wood. Let's use that. Yeah, oak wood. I think that will end up looking better. Here we go. Though right here is going to look a little bit odd. That is fine though. If your builds do look a little bit odd, that's fine. Just roll with it. Sort of like what I'm doing. I don't personally like some of the things I did in this, but can't exactly fix everything, can I? Not really. Here we go. I think I'm going to extend it one block outward, just one extra further block. This video may seem like I'm just rambling on, however, whenever I'm rambling, I do give quite a few good tips. And I probably need to say a few more rather than doing this. So one reason why you add in these types of deals, like this right here, is to make it more dynamic and changing. So whenever you have just a stereotypical shape, and it's just like a square, it does not look like nearly as good as this thing would because of how dynamic the shape is. It's different pretty much on every side, or if it's not different on every side, that's actually going to be a little bit odd because of the amount of like everything's different on each side. Like this side's different, like the terrain's different on all the sides as well. So every side looks different pretty much, except for like the windows are quite similar. It sort of ties it together. But the whole entire build is just different throughout the whole entire thing, which seems like that would not be a good idea, but it really does actually work quite well whenever you're building a nicer house. That's something I caught from Pixelbeister. I did not know that until I watched their video a while back. I didn't realize that's a good idea to make your buildings dynamic. I mean, I knew the shape needs to be interesting. However, you can make the shape interesting in easier ways than doing it how most people do it. Like many people try doing this outrageous shape and they just go too far and then it's too difficult to finish because the shape's just so odd that it just ruins it. I mean, not ruins it, but it makes it more difficult to make it look good. So if you're doing a shape, you don't exactly even need to make the base really crazy looking. The base doesn't need to look good. The house does. So if you ignore certain bits of the base and wait until you get finished, it's going to look better. Sort of like this thing right here. If you looked at the base of this thing, it was a really odd looking base and it was just really weird. It was this general shape and it's like, what? Why? Why does it have this thing sticking out here? I mean, you're thinking this is a really basic base. No, no pun intended. It's a really basic shape, and you wouldn't expect it to look good when you're done. However, whenever you add in these bits, like this window right here, it helps bring it together a little bit better. Bring it together a little bit better. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I did rhyme on that time on purpose. You're welcome. I really hope you enjoyed that. Um, Adding in these types of areas really does help. Now, there's many ways to really improve this. I do not personally like this window. I don't know what did I do in the other ones. What do? Okay, I did that. I don't like these. Well, they're a little bit taller too. Whatever. Add in this. Here we go. That's better. I like that. There we go. I think I like this now. Here we go. I think I'll add a few things like that. This. Yeah, I think I like that now. I think I like that. And we'll add in some soul sand. Let me just see if I did that on this one as well. I don't think I had a lot of room to, though. No, I didn't, though. Yeah, I'm gonna add in some soul sand over here as well. That should help a little bit, making it a bit more interesting. There we go. And here, is that a full block? No, it's not. Okay, well, here we go. So, that's sort of why I added in these windows. I hope I explained that well enough, or I explained everything. We'll go over that again real quick. Add in the windows and this right here to make the shape more dynamic and changing, and to take up a little bit of that space that was on the wall. So that's like a general overview of what I was saying, just less detailed of an overview. Here we go. I really need to work on this, like work on my presentation skills. So yeah, I don't want to go too off topic. So I'm just texturing this some more. I'm trying to keep it consistent because you want to make sure everything sort of looks similar. That's one reason why I have that's like oh yeah, yeah. Okay, there we go. I know what I needed to talk about. So whenever you're building these types of houses, and you're trying to learn, well, not these types of houses, but if you're trying to build any style that you've not done before, or if you're just trying to modify this and maybe to a windmill, I would recommend instead of just going after it and just remembering the style, take notes. So if you're going to look at this, let's just pretend this is a picture, and you're looking at this on YouTube at like around this angle right here, maybe. You would have to look at it and you'd have to realize, okay, write down. So the base. Let's see, the base. Okay, the base is really tall on a hill. You have to remember, maybe not on a hill. That's not a really good one. Let's see. The base is taller than a lot of houses. The walls are made of with spruce. The base is made of stone, so stone on the base, wood on the walls, and the roof is really just like a blanket. It looks like a blanket was just laid right over it. So you sort of look at everything and you see what's consistent with every house. Maybe even look at all three of them. So what's consistent with every house? What's consistent with every design? We have a prismarine roof, which that can change. If I did a different house and I made a few more houses with a different colored roof, that means it would sort of start becoming consistent, either prismarine, or the other color that I would use. So I would have prismarine as my first thing. So Prismarine is pretty much consistent with all of them so far. So if I was going to change this into a windmill, or if you were going to change this into a windmill or something like that, you need to remember that the roof needs to be prismarine. The base needs to be made very similar. The base needs to be organic. The whole entire build needs to be organic. So it has to have organic shapes because you're taking the general idea of each one. So you're taking an idea, the general idea, so that you can modify it into anything you want, which is a little bit complicated. This is one reason why I'm a good builder. Well, I'm a pretty good builder, but one reason why I'm as good as I am now is because I'm able to modify other people's styles into anything that I want it to be. So for this one, if I was going to make a windmill, I would have a very similar base to this. So I would have this curved base, sort of like this right here. So it would just be a little bit taller and a little bit straighter because it needs to be a bit more structural because it's a windmill. It's a mill. It's more structural. It needs more. It has mechanics inside, so it would be a bit of. It's like in between of like more structural. Let's just leave it at that. However, it would be of a like a curved nature, sort of like this. So it would have these because that's one of the most important bits whenever you're planning this, is to have those little curved bits right there, as well as the spruce and the jungle. So if I was going to do this, I would sort of keep it very similar to this. So the roof, the materials would stay the same except for maybe a few things. So I think I dwelled upon that a little bit too long, but that is quite important and that's something I would recommend testing out yourself. Look at other people's builds, right? Look at someone else's build. Look at your favorite builder's build that you've seen, and try to replicate what they did. Try to do exactly what they did. Try to copy one thing they've made. Then make sure you don't. Make sure you give them credit and say it's their house. Um, but copy what they did, and then after you copy it, try to modify it into something of your own, so that you put your own twist on it. I've done that before, and then if you modify it enough, you can say it's your own house because it was just inspired off of somebody else's build. So then you just say that it was inspired off of um, somebody else's build. I don't want to say names. I don't know. Billy's. It's inspired off of Billy's um, build. Billy's build. That's a bit cliche. But yeah, you can say that it's inspired off of Billy's build or something like that. And yeah, there we go. So that's something that you can do is take somebody else's build and steal like an artist. That's a book. Yeah, you could not watch. You could get that on Amazon. Steal like an artist is a book that sort of references that. If you are planning being a professional builder and you're planning on doing massive projects or something like that, you're planning on being an artist when you grow up, I recommend reading that book because it will help you learn how to take other people's ideas in a way that's not stealing. I'll sort of say an example. So like these houses are here. Um, I took ideas from a bunch of different people to build these houses. I took ideas from got on a Person's World Imperia RPG, Spartacus Spheres, his world, and there's a lot of builders on there, so I don't know who built these this type of house. However, I took the general idea, the curved, like the curved base, and the windows being really small, and the general size and idea of it, and I designed a house around the idea, the feeling that you get off the house. And then all I did was, not all I did, but I changed up the roof a little bit, changed up everything just a little bit, put my twist on it, as well as made it a little bit taller. So that's sort of like the idea of how I came up with this was I did that sort of process. You have to take other people's ideas, you have to take a bunch of different people's ideas, so then you can mold it into your own. Don't copy other people's stuff. I'm not saying you should copy. I'm saying you should get inspired off of other people's builds. Um, if you pause the video or exited like at the wrong time and you came back and all you heard was the bad part of that, you need some help. I really hope you didn't pause at the wrong moment. Anyways, so let's continue on. So I believe we're pretty much done here with this house. I will show you one other house, maybe down there, which is going to be really basic, but it's still going to look good. Which is something I was going to I said I was going to explain earlier. There we go. So whenever you're building a house or medieval or any style, one thing that's quite important in every style, with not just proportions, but one thing that's important for pretty much every style is that you get the feeling right. Now, that may sound like really weird. The feeling, what does that even mean? That is odd. Feeling. How do you get a feeling off of a video game? Well, it's sort of like this. Whenever you look at the image of this, you get a sort of like a feeling off of it, and it's because of the colors and the shapes that you use. The colors, the shapes, and it's the image that you're projecting in someone's mind. It's sort of like if you're writing a book, you're trying to project an image into someone's mind, and a lot of the times that comes with a feeling, or almost every time it comes with a feeling like nostalgic, if you built someone's house, like a house that they used to live in. Let's say, yeah, let's go with that example. Let's say if I built a house like that one of the houses that I used to live in, and I started and I finished it, and I completely finished the building, and it really looks like a house I used to live in. If once I started looking at that house, and once I start actually like, you know, walking around the house and in Minecraft, I'll start getting a nostalgic feeling. I start feeling nostalgic because it reminds me of the house I used to live in. So that's the idea behind how you make a feeling behind a world, because you can make it nostalgic, sort of like with a house like that. You can give it a medieval feeling by making it darker and stuff like that, and which I'm going to probably show an example of in a few moments. And then I'll start working on that house that I said I was going to work on a long time ago. But pretty much this is the idea of the house. So you're trying to get the feeling of medieval into it. Trying to get the flow of it, the fluidity of it. It's something that you're going to have to work on a little bit. You're going to make mistakes. And you need to accept that. And you need just to realize that you just need to practice and just work at it. But let's start in on that house in a second. But first, let me cut to whenever I have texture pack on, and then I'll show you some shaders after that. Okay, now is time to talk about texture packs. So if you have the availability to use texture packs, I would recommend it. I would be using a texture pack if I didn't feel like it's cheating. That's something I would recommend doing. So whenever you have a texture pack, it really just makes everything so much easier to do, because you can get some of that, some of the things, which the soul sand does. That's just creepy looking. Anyways, it does look a bit odd. But whenever you have a house sort of like this, and you want to make the roof look better, and you don't have any roofing blocks that look like tile, then you if you use a texture pack, there's blocks that look like tile, which I know this texture packs on Xbox also have. There's a few of them, Beyond the Lands and Skyrim texture pack that you can use. Let me find an example of some terracotta as well. So whenever I'm building a roof, I like using blocks that look like a roof block. So if I was going to build a house in a texture pack, I would probably pick a block that looks like roofing. So I might use this blue terracotta, so it looks like scales. So I would consider that to be like a roofing material in my opinion. It sort of looks like roofing, and then dark prismarine looks like tiles, almost like flooring. Then here's prismarine block is another one. Dark prismarine, and there's prismarine block. They both look like tiling or some sort of roofing. This is another one, which this one's like really covered in moss, so that might be a stone or something. But I could see that being like a mossy, covered roofing tile. I could see this being a form of a roofing tile. I could also see this being like bricks as well. But this sort of looks like roofing in my opinion. So I would probably put that like around here, put that on the roof, and turn that into like roofing. And this one is meant to be roofing. This is actually like roofing tiles. This is exactly what roofing tiles are supposed to look like. So they have like that tiled effect, which is sort of what I was going for with dark prismarine. So if you don't like dark prismarine, that's fine. You can change that. You can change it to a wood, maybe a stone. I don't know. I just wanted to add that in just so you can get some inspiration off of it, not because I think it looks good. Here we go. So I think I will now show you what the thing looks like with shaders, because that does help. Oh wow, I really like this view. Oh goodness, I like this so far. So whenever you use a texture pack and a shaders pack combined, which in this case I'm not, however, this is this was made for the texture pack I was using, which is also technically a mod, but the mod is not enabled. So anyways, so whenever you're using a shaders pack and a texture pack, if you notice that the shader pack made everything a little bit darker and a little bit more blue, that's because the texture pack I was using made everything a little bit more orange and darker. So whenever they pair up, that makes everything look a bit more realistic as well as a bit more medieval. It gives everything a medieval vibe because the water is darker. It's a little bit on the blue side as well. So it like makes it not only look realistic, but it makes it have like a medieval effect to it. Like everything in the world, especially with that texture pack on, will look more medieval in most cases because of the colors that are used. That's one reason why everything's so much more blue is because the person was trying to complement the colors that they were using in the texture pack slash mod pack that made it look more medieval. So whenever you have the shader pack and the texture pack enabled, which I'm not because I have the resolution turned up too high, I have it like, yeah, I could yeah, I'm just not going to deal with that. So whenever you have a shaders pack and text pack going, it gives it a certain feeling to it, which is something I was explaining earlier. So if you don't remember, I'm just going to say it real quick. Whenever you're building something, you're trying to get a feeling out of the crowd, and the easier way to get a feeling out of a crowd without having to do as much with the building is just to use a shaders pack or a texture pack. Now let's move on to building that house. Okay, now we are ready. So, the best example I would probably have would be of whenever you're doing something that's really undersimplified, or not undersimplified, oversimplified house that still looks good would be sort of like this. I feel like doing it up here actually. This is actually a good example, but we're going to use something else. Maybe down here. Not entirely sure. Probably should have planned out where I was going to put it beforehand. Here, I want to do it over here. Yeah, do it over here. So if I'm going to put like a house or something over here, and I wanted to make it look good without doing as much work, I'd probably need to do a few things, which first off would be make sure the shape is still good, even though the shape is meant to be horrible. So here we go. The best way to do that is to build it diagonally. So whenever this is, I'm trying to sort of show you an example of how to make your house look good whenever you're doing a city or something like that. But whenever you're building something and you're building it and you don't like it, really you should just not worry about it because well, you should worry about it a little bit. You should be concerned if your house looks good or not, because that is quite important whenever you're building something. You make sure it looks good, but it's not everything. So whenever you're building something, I would recommend that you put terraforming on it, which I said earlier, and a good reason for that was because you can make horrible looking houses like this look better by just adding terraforming, or if you're not going to add terraforming, by having other houses around it, by pairing them up together, or adding other things around it to make it look good, which in this case would be sort of like the land and everything around it. This building is still going to look good, even though it's not supposed to, if that makes sense. So let me get some slab. Get some slab. Ah, wow, it sounds really sketchy actually. Okay, there we go. Gonna add in the roof. So another thing would be the colors. So if you have some better or brighter colors in this build, it will also make it look better because that means that there's not really that means, but that makes more detail. As I said earlier, detail comes in many different forms. Well, about 7 actually. But those different ways of detail are quite important to make sure that you know, so that if you're building a house like this, you can make it look good without using some of the other things that you considered really important beforehand. So let me get some I feel like using a different block though for this one. Let's see, what block should I use for the roof? I don't know. I think I should just stick with the dark prismarine. Here we go. Yeah, I'll stick with that. So let's see what this ends up looking like. Should only take a few seconds. So whenever you use terraforming, as I said, it makes your house look better. So I'm sort of re-explaining what I said earlier, so don't worry. I'm going to repeat myself a lot in the next few seconds. So whenever you are building a house and you're building on a flat world, just don't pay attention to it too much. If it looks good on a flat world, it should look good on a terraformed world, but you need to realize that things look worse whenever they're not on terraforming, because then it just makes everything look so much flatter, and it's just, yeah, it does not work nearly as well. So just be prepared. If you're building a house like this and it's on a flat world, it may not look as good just because it's on a flat world. So let's see. I think we're almost done. I think I should add in a few of these. Like that. Yeah, there we go. Maybe a window. We'll add in some a spruce window. I'm not sure if I can really. Oh well. Guess we'll find out. There we go. I'm just gonna use slabs. Yeah, I think that's about good. That's a really big window actually. Yeah, it's a really big window. Well, this is why you test out your ideas beforehand, is um, on a flat world especially, or anywhere, truthfully. There we go. That is a lot better. So I'm just going to pretend like there's a window there. If you want to add a window there, that's fine. I'd even recommend adding in some of these as like the window, like the shaders of the window. There we go. And then I'd probably, I don't know, I feel like adding in another little section, maybe even like a mini tower in the back corner for, I don't know, let's see, maybe a chimney, if anything. And let's see what this looks like. Yeah, I think I'll add in this as a chimney or something. Yeah, there we go. I believe we have ourselves a bit of a chimney like this. Actually, I don't really like that. I won't keep it anyways. I'll keep it anyways, just so you guys can get some ideas and get inspired off of it, even if it is a failure. I do think it's a bit of a failure, but yeah. Let's see. I want to detail it a little bit more, and I feel like maybe skipping ahead. If you think this video is too long, definitely tell me, because then I can later on, whenever I do videos very similar to this, I can cut more out. But if you think it's about perfect and you think that I should do more videos like this, make sure you press the like button, because more likes to get more likely, yeah, likely, that I will be to make more videos very similar to this. And yeah, I'm gonna add a door here, I guess. There we go. We'll pretend that has an inside to it. Yeah, let's go with that. There we go. I think we're about good now. Maybe a little bit more here. We're almost done, and need some cobblestone and some andesite. So this whole entire house is basically made of a base. That's sort of what I would imagine. The whole entire thing is made of stone, so it would have a stone base under it, as well as having stone walls as well. So this is more structural, and this might be for the guards or something. I'm not entirely sure. I don't think someone would really live here. If someone did, then oh well, they live here. That's wonderful. It's a very nice home. Yeah, we like it. Definitely not peasant house looking at all. Here we go. There, that's what I was looking for. Yeah, we'll pretend that's not there. Okay. Yeah, it's not bad looking at all. Well, actually, it's a little bit bad looking. That's the point. You can take an awful looking house, like if this was in a flat world, this house would look absolutely like atrocious. You would just probably like if I built this and I was trying to like join your world to help you build it and you didn't know who I was, you would probably kick me out of the world because you'd probably think this is just absolutely horrible, atrocious, ugly piece of crap you've ever seen. Like the only thing that's on it is like one block of depth. Maybe okay, 1.5 blocks if you count that. 1.5 blocks. But it still looks good in the way I used it. It doesn't look bad in the way I used it. So I'd also recommend doing that. Doing houses very similar to that, or the idea behind it, because you can detail a mountain or a city with, well, not really a city, but you can detail a mountain with really small houses. So I might make up some of the space that's missing, like it needs a few more houses around here, but instead of doing those houses, which take forever to build, I might be adding in a few of those to take up some of the space without wasting as much time. So if you're doing a project and you're trying to get done as fast as possible, you can just do a quite a few or a moderate amount of really small diagonal houses, or it doesn't even have to be diagonal, but just a lot of smaller houses to detail it. These things right here are not good up close. I'm trying to explain it in a different way. Ready? New, different way of explaining it. So these houses are not very good up close. They do not look good from this angle. Like if you're this close, it doesn't look very good. It's like why did you do that? It does not look very good. But whenever you look at the whole scene, the whole picture of everything, it ends up looking a lot better because you don't notice it as bad. And though there are a few things I could have done, like make it a bit thicker. This is like a shed, I guess. Yeah, I guess we'll call it a shed. Maybe like a smoke shed, like where you smoke your meats. I don't think there'd be a window in one of those though. Well, maybe. I don't know. I didn't live back in the medieval ages, so I wouldn't know. But using these really does help save time. If you want a tutorial on how to save like the best ways to save time when you're building, sort of like using those, or maybe even like that is something that is odd. So I could do a tutorial on how to use small homes in your builds because I mean I know I had trouble. I still have a little bit of trouble using like those small homes or small little huts in my cities because I like doing everything like a really like I like doing a lot of hard to do houses so it fills up everything a lot more. But it's completely fine using that. I would recommend using that in your houses. So I believe we're done. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoy the next video. And if you didn't actually enjoy this video, then oh well. I, yeah. Well, at least you made it to the end. But if you want to see some more information very similar to this and you want to learn how to build better in Minecraft and get some ideas for like building or anything, if you just want to learn how to build better and you enjoyed this video, then subscribe. And if you really enjoyed this video and you want to see more and you want to help this channel grow, then share this video to someone you think that will actually need it. Someone that you think will actually want to watch it and that will gain something from it. Only subscribe if you think that you will gain something from subscribing. I don't want you subscribing just because like I ask you to or just for no reason at all. Only subscribe if you think you're going to gain something from watching my channel. So I hope you have a great day. I hope you have a great, sublime, and fantastically majestic day. And I guess I will talk to you in the next video. I hope you enjoy the next video as well. It should be a cinematic in about a week.